Chapter 1. The Torches in the Cave. I remember the world vividly. A secluded homestead built snugly into the side of a hill, overlooking a dense forest. Not far from my hillside base was the dark mouth of a cave. One overcast in-game afternoon, I ventured over to that cave, curious to gather more coal and iron. As I approached the entrance, a chill ran down my spine. The cave was already lit by torches. I froze. I knew I had never explored this cave before, yet there they were, a row of gently flickering torches illuminating the stone walls just inside the entrance. I stood there puzzled, my mind racing through possibilities. Could I have placed them long ago and forgotten? No. I was the only person in this single-player world, and I distinctly remembered never entering this cave until now. The thought of the legends I'd heard, the old stories of mysterious players haunting solo worlds, crept into my mind. A sense of uneasy watchfulness fell over me as I backed away from the cave's entrance, deciding not to go inside after all. That evening, I hastily constructed a small lookout station protruding from the flat side of the hill, its window facing directly toward that cave. Every so often, I'd climb up to the lookout and peer out, scanning the cave and forest for any signs of movement. Always, I saw nothing but the swaying pixelated trees and the darkness beyond the torchlight. Still, the unexplained torches gnawed at me. To feel safer, I redesigned my shelter's entrance in a paranoid fashion. The only way in or out was via an underground tunnel, sealed behind me with a pillar of dirt whenever I entered. From the outside, my hill house had no door at all, just solid earth. Each night, I slept in-game, behind barricaded walls, telling myself no one and nothing could get in without me knowing. For a few days, all was peaceful. I mined deep under my home and expanded my storage. By day, I would cautiously farm and hunt, always keeping the cave in my peripheral vision. Sometimes, from the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a flicker of movement at the cave entrance or among the trees, but whenever I focused my gaze, nothing was there. Perhaps it was just the flutter of those torch flames. Combined with my imagination, I even began to wonder if there was some glitch that generated torches in a new cave. A glitch, I reasoned, was far less frightening than the alternatives. One gray, drizzly afternoon, I climbed to my second-floor loft to organize some chests. The wind howled outside, and the patter of rain set an eerie mood. Suddenly, amid the noise of the storm, I heard the distinct sound of a wooden door creaking open. My heart leapt into my throat. Every entrance to my base was sealed. I hadn't used a wooden door on the surface at all. In fact, the only door in my entire house was an oak door at the end of my underground tunnel, which led into the base interior. But that door should have been completely inaccessible from the outside world. Buried beneath dirt and stone, I stood frozen upstairs, listening. Maybe I misheard. Another thunderclap boomed, and through it I swore I heard the faint click of that same door closing, as if gently shut by someone or something. I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Was I truly alone here? Cautiously, I crept to the ladder and descended to the first floor. All the windows were intact, nothing broken. The house was silent save for the crackle of my furnace. Gathering my courage, I tiptoed to where the underground entrance was, the short tunnel that led out under the dirt pillar. My worst fears were confirmed. The dirt blockade I had placed at the tunnel's exit was still there, unbroken. The wooden door just beyond it, the one that opened into the outside if the dirt was removed, was standing wide open. I stared at the door, mouth dry and pulse pounding in my ears. It was as if someone had phased straight through the dirt wall from outside and casually toggled the door open. In that moment, rationality evaporated. I didn't bother investigating further or trying to come up with explanations. The legends I'd heard of, ghostly figures, of Herobrine, the supposed spectre haunting single-player worlds, surged in my mind. I felt an overwhelming sense that I was being watched at that very second, from somewhere nearby, perhaps from the dark of the cave or the dripping forest beyond. Adrenaline took over. I stumbled back from the open door and dashed to the nearest escape. I yanked open my pause menu, saved, and quit the game instantly. My hands shook as I sat at the menu screen, rain still pattering in my ears from my headphones. I had never exited a world so fast in my life. I can only describe my feeling in that instant as a primal fear, the kind you get when you realize something is deeply wrong, and you might not be alone. I never entered that world again. In fact, mere moments after quitting, I deleted the save file entirely, as if to banish whatever unseen presence lurked within it. To this day, I have no explanation for the torches in that cave, or the door that somehow opened itself. Perhaps it was just a bizarre glitch, or some corrupted chunk causing phantom sounds. But I know the fear I felt was real. As I erased the world, I couldn't shake the image of those unexplained torches casting flickering shadows on the cave wall. And maybe, just maybe, a silhouette standing among them, watching me from the darkness. I sometimes wonder if I overreacted, if an odd bug was to blame. But on lonely nights, I recall the chilling moment and remind myself why I never went back. Some mysteries in Minecraft are better left unexplored. Between these tales of uneasy silence and flickering shadows, the line between simple glitches and the supernatural begins to blur. The next account continues to toy with that unsettling ambiguity, recounting a series of strange occurrences that left a player questioning reality itself. Chapter 2: Strange Occurrences. I had always considered my single-player world a safe haven, a pleasant, ordinary survival realm where nothing too unexpected ever happened. That changed over the course of a few very unsettling Minecraft days. It began with something small. While roaming the plains in search of a spot to build a permanent house, I stumbled upon an odd little patch of terrain. In the middle of a grassy field, I found a perfect one-block puddle of water surrounded by a ring of gravel. It was as if someone had tried to dig a well or a tiny pond and changed their mind. The formation stood out in the otherwise normal landscape, a strange polka dot of water in an otherwise dry area. I shrugged it off as a quirky world generation fluke, the kind of minor oddity one might screenshot for fun. Little did I know, it was just the first of many anomalies. After eventually constructing a cozy cabin and settling in, I began hearing things whenever I was near my home at night. Eerie cave noises, those haunting ambient moans, and distant wind sounds. At first it didn't concern me. Minecraft's ambience is known to play tricks, but it kept happening, with unusual frequency, and always right outside my house. On one occasion, just as dusk fell, I heard the low ambient moan that usually signifies a cavern nearby, yet repeated digging under and around my house turned up no caves at all, just solid earth. Every time I stepped outside after dark, another ghostly echo would ring out from nowhere. The sound of rushing air, the clink of an unknown object, sometimes a distant pop, as if a block was broken far away. It felt as though invisible caverns were surrounding me, or perhaps something unseen was moving underground. I began to feel on edge each sunset, knowing the cave sounds would soon return even though no cave existed. I would spin around, scanning the tree line and the ground for any clues, finding nothing but the gentle swaying of pixelated grass. The silence afterward felt heavy, as if the world was holding its breath. One night, as I ready to retreat indoors, I did a quick sweep around my area, sword in hand, to make sure no mobs were lurking. Seeing nothing, I turned to go back inside, when snap, a snarl rang out, and I was suddenly attacked by a horde of zombies, right at my doorstep. 3 rotting figures seemed to appear out of thin air, converging on me with hungry groans. I could have sworn just seconds earlier there wasn't a single monster in sight. The area was dimly lit by my porch lanterns, and no zombies were wandering about. Yet in a blink, an entire trio had me surrounded. Heart pounding, I swung my sword wildly. In the struggle, one zombie knocked me back against my door. Panicked, I managed to slay them, the last one collapsing at my feet and vanishing in a puff of smoke. Gasping for virtual breath, I ate some bread to recover and frantically lit up even more torches around my house perimeter, determined to eliminate any dark spot that could spawn such an ambush. Still, it unsettled me. How had 3 zombies snuck up at once, without me seeing or hearing them coming? It was as if they had spawned all together deliberately, or been placed there when I wasn't looking. The next day, eager to shake off the previous night's scare, I decided to venture to a nearby forest to tame some wolves for companionship and protection. The sun shone bright as I navigated through the trees, and indeed found a small pack of wolves. After feeding them bones, I soon had 6 loyal wolves, 2 of them adorable pups, following me as I journeyed back toward home. Their playful barks lightened my mood. We came upon a shallow river along the way, nothing more than a gentle stream, only 2 blocks deep at most. I waded through the water with the wolves paddling behind. Upon climbing onto the opposite bank, I paused to count my new pets. 3 of the wolves were missing. I spun around confused. Only 3 wolves, and 1 pup stood at my side now, whimpering. The rest were nowhere in sight. Not on my side of the bank, not stuck in the water, not on the far side. It was as if half the pack had just vanished underwater. I retraced my steps, thinking maybe they'd gotten stuck, or taken a different path. I even dove back into the clear river, peering through the glassy water for any signs of wolves drowning or stuck under the bank. Nothing. The missing wolves were simply gone. No death messages appeared in the chat, and I had not heard any yelp of a wolf dying, which usually happens if they suffocate or drown. They had been following me diligently one moment, and the next moment, gone without a trace. I felt a pang of sadness and confusion. The remaining wolves seemed just as perplexed, tilting their heads as they looked around. Eventually I pressed on, consoling myself that perhaps it was a chunk-loading glitch, and the wolves might reappear later. By the time I returned to my cabin, dusk was again approaching. I pinned the remaining wolves in a fenced area outside, and gave them some meat to keep them happy. As night fell, I kept busy organizing loot in my storage. That's when I heard a strange thunk, thunk, thunk outside, rapid and rhythmic. I recognized the sound immediately. Arrows hitting wood. Startled, I peeked through my window. To my shock, a skeleton was firing at something frantically, but not at me. It stood at the edge of the torchlight, just beyond my fence, and was loosing arrow after arrow directly into the side of a tall oak tree near my house. There was another skeleton a few blocks away, and the 2 appeared to be shooting at each other. At least, that's what I assumed at first. I rushed to the door to intervene. Better to break up the skirmish than have stray arrows hitting my tamed wolves. By the time I stepped outside with shield raised, both skeletons had somehow managed to climb onto a low hill and were now beneath a large overhang of rock. They were standing almost on top of each other, bows drawn, firing straight upward into the stone above them. The arrows rained down around them like a bizarre fountain. I paused, utterly baffled. It was as if the skeletons had lost their target and glitched into shooting the ceiling repeatedly. In the span of a few seconds, one of the skeletons had emptied what looked like dozens of arrows, many of which were now stuck in a single block overhead, quivering. No skeleton should have that many arrows, I thought. They typically shoot one at a time, slowly, but this volley was nearly continuous, as if someone held down a trigger on a machine gun bow. One skeleton finally fell to the other's arrows, bones clattering to the ground, and the victor then just wandered off into the darkness, ignoring me entirely. In the morning light, I inspected the scene of the skeleton duel. The ground was littered with arrow entities, far more than any skeleton should logically shoot. The side of the hill was pockmarked with arrows too, an almost comical number of them sticking out of the dirt and wood in a tight cluster. I felt a little shiver. The whole fight had been extremely odd, almost unnatural in its intensity. This world is really acting weird, I murmured to myself, not wanting to use the word haunted. Over the next couple of days, I continued to encounter inexplicable events. Mining in a well-explored area, I would occasionally return to find blocks missing or new holes in the ground near my home, as if an Enderman had been active, yet there were no Endermen around, and the patterns didn't match their usual random block theft. In one instance, a single tall grass block that I swear I had trimmed was standing again right outside my front door, despite me not having left or reloaded the chunk. Minor as that was, it felt like the world was subtly shifting when I wasn't looking. Each time I questioned my memory. Didn't I remove that grass? Was that dirt hill always so oddly flat on one side? I even found the small gravel-ringed water puddle I had encountered on my first day had disappeared when I went back to look for it, as if the world had corrected itself, or someone had quietly filled it in. By now I was truly uneasy. So many things had happened that I couldn't explain. Ghostly cave noises in solid ground, spontaneously appearing monsters, vanishing wolves, arrow-spewing skeletons, and random terrain changes. Any one of these on their own might be dismissed as a glitch or coincidence, but all of them occurring in short succession. It felt like my world was playing tricks on me, or that something, some presence, was tinkering with the fabric of the game, just to unsettle me. On what would be my final night in that world, I decided to stay up through the Minecraft night and keep watch, determined to catch any odd occurrence in the act. I climbed to the roof of my house, giving me a 360-degree view of the surroundings. My 3 remaining wolves sat at attention below. The square moon climbed the sky. For a long time, nothing happened. The night was calm and eerily beautiful, with only the distant hiss of a spider and the hoot of an owl from an ambient sound mod I had installed, breaking the silence. I began to think the streak of weirdness was over, but at the darkest hour of night, I heard a noise behind me that made my blood run cold. A soft click and creak, unmistakably the sound of my fence gate opening, the gate to the wolf pen. I whipped around and peered down at the ground. To my astonishment, the fence gate was swinging open and shut repeatedly, as if being clicked rapidly. The wolves had all stood up and were backing away, confused. I could see no mob nearby that could be triggering it. No skeleton, no wandering trader, nothing. It was as if an invisible player was there spamming the gate. My mind flashed back to the stories of invisible entities, or ghosts. I scrambled down the ladder to ground level, sword drawn, and cautiously approached the pen. As I came within a few blocks, the gate abruptly stopped moving and hung open. My wolves looked up at me with anxious, pixelated eyes. I swear I felt watched, like an unseen gaze was bearing down on me. I mustered the courage to step forward and close the gate. The pen was empty except for the animals. Silence. I exhaled, That was enough. I didn't wait for daylight. Right then and there, under the ghostly moon, I saved and quit. The next day, I made a backup of the world, in case I ever dared return, and then shelved it indefinitely. I still have that save file, untouched. I've never definitively learned what caused all those phenomena. Perhaps a cascade of glitches in that version, or perhaps something beyond glitches. Strange occurrences is the only way I can describe it. A series of events that made me seriously question whether my game was just a game anymore. Even now, when I play New Worlds, I occasionally run into a single odd event, a door opening on its own, or a patch of light with no source, and I feel my heart quicken, remembering that old world where the line between code and the uncanny felt frighteningly thin. Sometimes the most unsettling experiences come not from a single dramatic event, but from a succession of subtle oddities that chip away at one's sense of reality. Our next story, however, describes a far more direct and chilling encounter, one of Minecraft's most infamous legends manifesting in a lonely world. Chapter 3: Eyes in the Fog. I had recently spawned a brand new single-player world, full of optimism and ready for a simple adventure. The world was generated in an old alpha version of Minecraft, giving everything a slightly grainy, hazy look. On the first day, I did the usual tasks, punching trees, crafting a workbench, and gathering basic supplies. My computer wasn't the best, so I played with the render distance set to tiny, meaning a thick fog surrounded my visible area at all times. It gave the world a secluded, misty atmosphere. Beyond a few dozen blocks, everything faded into gray. Despite the limited view, things started off normally enough. I built a small wooden hut near the spawn and killed a few pigs for food. On the second day, I decided to explore a bit beyond my comfort zone. Axe and sword in hand, I ventured into a dense forest that bordered a rolling mountain. The fog swirled between the thick tree trunks, and I found myself enjoying the peace of chopping logs with only the sound of my footsteps and occasional pop of breaking wood. As I hewed my way through the woods, something flickered at the far edge of my vision, a movement just at the boundary of the fog. I paused, thinking it might be a cow or a wandering sheep. I caught a glimpse of something pale, just for an instant, before it disappeared behind a tree. Curious, and admittedly in need of leather for armor, I pursued it. I walked toward where I thought I saw the movement, scanning between the trees. The fog was denser in this part of the forest, an opaque curtain that rendered anything more than a few dozen blocks away invisible. There was no sign of the pale shape now. Perhaps it had indeed been a cow that moved out of sight. I shrugged and continued onward, occasionally chopping a tree or picking up fallen saplings. I tried to be mindful of my bearings, so as not to get lost in the fog. After a minute or two, I emerged from the tree line into a small clearing at the base of a hill. The sun was high overhead, lighting the clearing well, and then I saw it. On the opposite side of the clearing, standing among the drifting fog, was a figure. My first thought was that another player had somehow joined my game, though I knew that was impossible in single player. The figure stood perfectly still on a low hill, looking toward me. I realized it looked just like the default Minecraft character model, Steve. But something was very wrong. The figure's eyes were pure white, no pupils, no irises, just two blank, ghostly white sockets staring in my direction. A jolt of alarm shot through me. There was no username label above the person, as you'd expect in multiplayer. I double-checked that I wasn't in some LAN session by accident. I wasn't. This was my world. Solo. So who, or what, was that? I inched a bit closer, not daring to take my eyes off the mysterious stranger. The distance between us was still considerable, and the fog blurred some details, but I could clearly make out the default Steve-like clothing, a teal shirt and blue pants, and that eerie face with blank white eyes. It gave no indication it noticed me, but it must have. I was standing in the open. My heart began to pound. I called out in chat, a simple, shaky hello. Of course, there was no response. Thinking back, in offline single-player, chat wouldn't even show. But I was too flustered to realize that. The figure turned abruptly and started to walk away, heading for the slope of the hill behind it. I panicked at the thought of losing sight of it, so I sprinted forward, determined to follow. I raced across the clearing, hopping over a small brook and scrambling up the hill after the strange player. As I crested the hill, my eyes swept all around. Nothing, just swaying grass and the encroaching fog beyond. The figure was gone as quickly as it had appeared. I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief because those lifeless white eyes had unnerved me profoundly, and disappointment because I had so many questions. Who was that? Some glitch spawning an NPC player model, an Easter egg, or something else entirely? I stood there for a few minutes, adrenaline still coursing through me, scanning the foggy distance. Once or twice, I thought I saw a distant movement again, a flicker at the edge of visibility, but it could have been my imagination combined with the bobbing of trees in the breeze. I decided to head back toward my home base, unsettled and deep in thought. On my return journey through the forest, I started noticing peculiar things that I hadn't placed myself. First, I nearly fell into a 2x2 tunnel that burrowed straight into the ground. It was a neat shaft with smooth walls, almost certainly not a natural cave. It looked exactly as if someone had mined a staircase down, with 2-block wide symmetry. Yet the tunnel abruptly ended after descending about 10 blocks, leading nowhere, as if whoever dug it had just vanished. I certainly had not created this. I hadn't done any mining in that area at all. The tunnel's presence perplexed me. I clambered out and continued on, now keeping a sharper eye on the surroundings. A short while later, emerging from the forest near the coast, I spotted something out on the water, a perfect little pyramid of sand, rising from the ocean, just a few blocks high, like a tiny bizarre monument. I knew Minecraft's terrain generation could be odd, but a symmetrical sand pyramid in deep water is not a typical occurrence. It gave me the impression that someone had carefully placed it there. I circled it in my boat, bemused and anxious, half expecting to see that white-eyed figure standing atop it like a beacon. But the pyramid was deserted, its silent form reflecting the orange hues of the setting sun. I left it untouched and paddled the rest of the way across the bay. Reaching my base as night fell, I felt relieved to be in familiar territory, but the sense of being watched remained. I couldn't shake the feeling that throughout my trip home, through the fog, I was not alone. More than once, I thought I saw that silhouette again, at the edge of my vision, only for it to dissolve when I tried to focus. One time, back in the forest as dusk approached, I even spun around thinking I heard footsteps behind me, but there were only lonely swaying trees and the distant growl of a zombie preparing to come out at night. I lit extra torches around my cabin and tried to calm myself. That night, I crafted a few paintings and hung them on my wooden walls to make the place feel homier. One of the paintings was the image of Donkey Kong, a rather cheerful pixel art. It made me smile and helped dispel the gloom from my mind. Determined not to succumb to fear, I told myself there must be some logical explanation. Maybe a glitch spawned a default player model. Maybe the world seed had some quirky generation patterns. I even considered that perhaps I had unknowingly loaded a mod or plugin, that added an AI stalker, but I hadn't installed anything of the sort. The hours passed quietly, and by the time I turned in, logging my character out in a bed, I had almost convinced myself I imagined the whole encounter. The next day, in-game, I set out to gather resources in nearby caves, trying to return to normal routine. I found a promising cavern system not far from my base, and spent a good deal of time underground, mining coal and iron, and even stumbling on a vein of gold. The rhythmic task of mining calmed my nerves. Occasionally I would hear the ambient cave moans echo through the darkness, but I pushed the spooky noises aside and kept focused. After filling my inventory, I climbed back out of the cave and realized to my surprise that dusk was already approaching again. Time flies in Minecraft when you're busy. I hurried through the woods toward home. The sky was turning a pinkish orange, and that ever-present fog clung to the tree trunks. As I broke through the trine into the small meadow near my hut, I stopped dead in my tracks. Something was different. The large oak tree that stood a stone's throw from my front door looked odd, approaching cautiously. I realized why. Every single one of its leaves had been removed. The tree was a bare skeleton of logs and branches, standing forlorn and leafless. I knew for certain this was not my doing. I hadn't touched that tree, and leaf decay wouldn't occur unless the wood was removed, which it wasn't. It was as though someone had meticulously sheared or broken every leaf block, leaving a naked timber scaffold. I glanced around my base. A couple of other nearby trees also sported unnatural bald patches. A creeping dread enveloped me. This was a known hallmark of the legend I was beginning to suspect. Leafless trees, strange tunnels, pyramids. My hand shook as I entered my hut. On the wall, my paintings were still there, providing some comfort, but I nearly jumped out of my skin when I turned toward my storage chests. One of them had a sign placed on it that I definitely did not put there. The sign was blank, or so I thought. When I moved the torch closer, I saw it actually had a single word written in a very light gray text, almost impossible to see against the sign's oak texture. The word was stop. Nothing else, just that single chilling command. Stop. I cannot overstate the wave of fear that crashed over me. This was exactly what I'd read about in old forum archives. Stories of a ghost in the machine, a presence known as Herobrine. According to the internet lore, Herobrine was the restless spirit of Notches, the creator of Minecraft, deceased brother, somehow embedded into the game. I had always thought those tales were pure fiction or hoaxes, but here I was, apparently living one. The white-eyed figure, the strange man-made structures, the leafless trees, and now this message. It all aligned too well with the Herobrine legend. I tore the sign off the chest and backed into a corner, heart pounding. What did it want me to stop playing on this world, investigating the signs of its presence? My mind raced, feeling watched again. I rushed upstairs to my rooftop lookout, as it offered a broader view around my base. The last light of sunset was fading. In that dim gloom, through the veil of fog, I scanned desperately for any movement outside. My farm, my path to the water, the tree line, all stood quiet, draped in twilight stillness. Then, just as the square moon began to rise, I saw him far off beyond the edge of my cultivated area. The figure stood at the fog's boundary, half shrouded by mist. Those featureless white eyes practically glowed against the dusk. He was watching me. We locked gaze for what felt like an eternity, though it could only have been a second or two. I blinked, and in that split instant of my eyes closing and opening, he was gone, vanished into the fog once more. That was it. I couldn't continue this alone. in a mix of terror and exhilaration. For part of me realized I had something groundbreaking here. I saved the game and quickly went to the Minecraft forums to tell my story and ask if anyone else had seen similar things. I posted a new thread detailing the sightings of the mysterious player, the torches, tunnels, pyramids, and that unsettling stop sign. My post went live, and then within 5 minutes it was deleted. No explanation, no comment, just gone. Confused and a bit frustrated, I posted again, shorter this time. Who is the white-eyed player I keep seeing? Is this a known glitch? That post too vanished almost immediately. It was as if the forum itself did not want this information out. Feeling a creeping conspiracy at play, I then received a private message from a user I didn't recognize. The message contained just one word: stop. The sender's username was Herobrine. When I clicked on the profile, the page 404'd as if no such user existed. I sat back in my chair, palms sweating. This had escalated beyond a weird game encounter. Someone, or something, was actively intercepting my attempts to get help or information. My phone buzzed on my desk, startling me badly. I had an email from another Minecraft forum user who had seen my short-lived post. In his email, he urged caution, saying the forum moderators can read private messages, so we should communicate via email instead. He claimed he had also seen the white-eyed player and had compiled a small list of other players, a sort of secret community, who encountered similar things. I couldn't believe what I was reading. According to him, all of those players had similarly bizarre worlds, man-made structures appearing, signs with cryptic phrases, distant sightings of a pale-eyed Steve. Some of them even reported aggressive encounters, while others like me only saw the being from afar. He ended the email by noting one more chilling detail. The common thread in these reports was that the figure always had those glowing pupilless eyes, and often, after an encounter, the player would find evidence pointing to the name Herobrine. I typed back feverishly, asking what he thought Herobrine really was. Some kind of ghost in the code, a prank by the developers. The email reply I got after a day or so was brief. He said, "Notch doesn't talk about it, but there are rumors. Some say Herobrine was Notch's brother." Notch publicly denied that, but when directly asked if he had a brother, Notch replied, "I did, but he is no longer with us." I felt goosebumps reading that. If the legend was true, even a kernel of it, then maybe, just maybe, a restless spirit had found its way into the game, manifesting as the ghostly form I saw. In the days that followed, I didn't see the white-eyed entity again. It was as if, after leaving me the stern warning, he receded, perhaps waiting to see if I'd heed it. I cleaned up my base, cautiously continued playing, but with every step I took in that world, I felt like I was trespassing on someone else's territory. Eventually, I decided to start a fresh world for the sake of my sanity, but before leaving, I did one last thing. I pressed F2 to take a screenshot. The next time I caught sight of the figure, that chance came only once more. While dismantling my house, I didn't want to leave his world a mess. I looked out toward the distant fog one final time. There on a distant hilltop where the fog met the horizon, I saw a lone shape, white eyes glinted through the haze. I fumbled for the screenshot key. Click. The camera captured the scene just as the figure turned and disappeared for good. The printed image was grainy, and the figure very small. You could almost dismiss it as a graphics glitch or trick of the light. But I knew what I saw. I still have that screenshot, the only piece of evidence that Herobrine, or something like him, had been in my world. When I look at it, I feel a mix of fear and fascination. In the picture, if you zoom in, you can just make out a player-like figure standing on the misty fringe of loaded chunks, exactly where I remember he stood, watching me. It sends a shiver through me every time. I never definitively learned what the entity wanted or why it appeared. All I have is an ominous recollection of those empty eyes and a single word of warning: stop. Whether it was truly a ghost in the machine, a rogue AI, or a prank that took on a life of its own, I'll probably never know. All I can say is that I experienced it, and once you've seen those eyes in the fog, you can never unsee them. Legend or not, the tale of Herobrine left an indelible mark on the Minecraft community, and on those who claim to have encountered him now. But he is not the only spectre said to roam the code. Our next story takes us from the lonely single-player forests to the realm of multiplayer, where an invisible intruder turned a normal session into a true horror story. Chapter 4: The Unseen. Back in high school, a group of my close friends and I ran a small private Minecraft server. It was a vanilla survival realm, just 5 of us whitelisted, running on my friend's spare laptop as a makeshift server. We'd spent months building up a cozy little town near spawn, complete with a communal storage lodge, individual houses, farms, and even a grand stone statue we jokingly built in the town center. We were proud of our little world and spent many evenings after homework adventuring together or expanding our settlement. Nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened on our server. It was our safe digital hangout. One chilly autumn night, only 2 of us were online. Myself and my buddy G. I'll call him J here. We were on a voice call via Skype, chatting idly as we each worked on separate projects. In-game, I was gathering materials in a distant cave system, deep underground, far from our base, while Jay was back home, adding a new wing to his house. Our conversation was casual, mostly jokes and commentary on the resources I was finding. After a while, a comfortable quiet fell between us as we focused on our tasks, with just the sound of my pickaxe clinking and Jay's building noises in the background.
Suddenly Jay's voice crackled in my headset. "Hey, are you messing with me?" His tone was confused, bordering on nervous. I paused. "Huh? What do you mean?" He replied, "Very funny. I see you out here by the statue. How did you get back so fast?" My blood turned cold for a second. "Jay, I'm still in the mines, man. I haven't left. Check the player list." We both pressed tab to see the list of online players. It was just my username and his, no one else. I see your username," he said slowly. "It's standing right here." I was already breaking into a run, trying to navigate out of the cave with a flurry of torches marking my path. "What do you see exactly?" "Another me?" I asked, heart pounding. Ja hesitated. It looks just like you. Same username hovering and everything. You're standing by the stone statue, looking up at it. A creeper hissing nearby jolted me. I barely dodged it as it exploded, trying to focus on both escaping the cave and listening to Jay. There was absolutely no way I was physically at spawn. I was thousands of blocks away, desperately trying to find the cave exit. Yet Jay was adamant he saw my avatar there.
On our Skype call, I could hear Jay's breathing grow uneven. "Now you're just standing still, staring at me," he whispered. This sent a chill down my spine. "Jace, listen to me. It's not me. I swear on our friendship. I'm in a tunnel right now, probably 3,000 blocks away. Whatever you're seeing, it isn't me." There was a long pause, and then Jay cursed. "It vanished, dude. It just vanished." I finally scrambled my way out of the cave into the night air, thoroughly spooked, and now sprinting back toward base, with my pickaxe in hand, and a trail of panic behind me. As I ran through the dark, I grilled G for details. He explained that he had been placing some wooden logs when out of the corner of his screen, he saw a player standing near the town square statue. We often snuck up on each other for pranks, so at first he assumed I had returned, using an "pass you home" command or something, though we had no such plugin. But what unsettled him was that the figure just stood there, doing nothing, not even shifting or moving slightly as normal players do. It was as if my character was frozen upright. That's when he'd asked if I was messing around. And just moments ago, right before disappearing, the me he saw had turned its head as if looking directly at him across the distance, then instantly was gone between one frame and the next. As he described this, I felt a knot in my stomach. Could it be a glitchy duplicate of my player due to lag? Perhaps the server hadn't realized I was deep underground and was showing a ghost version of me at spawn. We had experienced a bug or two before, like floating animals or ghost blocks, so a weird client-side glitch was possible. We tried to calm ourselves with that rationale. By the time I made it back to our town, exhausting my food and dodging a few skeletons along the way, everything looked normal. The statue stood peacefully in the moonlight. Our houses were intact, and Jai's avatar was up on his rooftop with bow in hand. He had taken a defensive position just in case. I remember my hands trembling as I typed in the chat, half expecting an unseen third party to reply. No new messages. We thoroughly checked every corner of our settlement together, lanterns in hand. We found nothing odd. No footprints, no dropped items, no open doors that shouldn't be open. Still, an unnerving feeling lingered. We decided to continue playing, but stay close together this time. I went to help Jay finish the roof of his extension. At some point, we started joking that maybe my character's ghost wanted to admire our statue. We laughed nervously, trying to diffuse the tension. Over the next hour, nothing strange happened. We relaxed a bit. Jay eventually said he was going to log off for the night. I was planning to do the same, but I wanted to drop off my mining haul in our storage first and do a last-minute farm harvest. So, after G disconnected, his player left the game with the usual message. I was alone on the server. I could see the 1-5 players online indicator. The quiet of the now empty town felt different. The crackle of torches and chirp of crickets were the only sounds. Still on the Skype call, G stayed a bit to watch my screen via screen share, out of curiosity, and maybe to ensure I made it safely to my in-game bed. We joked, with him virtually looking over my shoulder. I made my way to the community storage lodge. Our storage building was a cozy cabin, with walls lined by chests and item frames labeling them. I began sorting the spoils of my mining trip. Ore into the smelter chest, cobblestone into the bulk chest, special loot like a rare saddle I'd found into the valuables chest. It was a calming routine, and I started to forget the scare from earlier. Just as I finished organizing and was about to close the chest interface, I heard a door creak open behind my character. I had closed the front door of the storage lodge when I entered, and now it was swinging ajar. On Skype I heard Jay utter, "What was that?" as he too heard the unmistakable Minecraft door sound through my speakers. My in-game character slowly turned to face the door. There was no one there. Beyond the threshold, our town square was illuminated by glowstone lamps, empty and still. I approached the open doorway cautiously, heart thudding, creak. The door closed itself right in my face. I jumped back, inadvertently letting out a yelp on the call. Jay said in a tense voice, "Dude, there's nobody else on the server, right?" I checked the player list again with trembling fingers. Just me. I opened the door and stepped outside, scanning left and right with my sword out. If this was one of my friends somehow pulling a prank, I was determined to catch them. But I saw no one. The sky was dark, but the town square was well lit. Every torch and lamp was in place. The only thing out of place was a single arrow sticking into the ground near the statue's base. Odd, I thought. Maybe a skeleton had fired it earlier. As I inched closer to examine it, chat suddenly flickered with a message. Jet joined the game. My heart leapt with relief seeing my friend's username pop back in. Perhaps he'd decided to come back to help me investigate. "Hey, you're back," I said aloud on the call. "So you saw that door thing too, right?" "Crazy." Legier's voice came through confused. "I didn't join. I'm still just watching your stream." "But my account..." His voice trailed off as we both stared at the screen. Sure enough, his character, or something appearing to be him, was now standing in the town square, right by the stone statue. The avatar looked exactly like Jer's skin, and his username was hovering above it. My voice caught in my throat. I could see it with my own eyes, but I knew Jay was not actually controlling it. "Is that you?" I barely managed to whisper. On Skype, Jay's breathing had become shallow. "No, I'm not logged in. This isn't possible." We watched as his doppelganger began to move. It turned its head slowly towards me, then started running, sprinting, directly at me. "It's coming for you. Get out of there," Jay yelled in my ear. I was frozen in shock for a split second, but then instinct kicked in, and I turned and bolted into the storage cabin, slamming the wooden door behind me. Through the door's small glass pane, I saw Jay's lookalike skid to a halt. Right outside, I backed away, drawing my sword, and feeling dread coiling in my gut. The avatar just stood there facing the door, as if listening or sensing my presence. I wasn't sure what to do. Attack it? Log off? As I deliberated, the decision was made for me. The thing posing as Jay began hitting the door. In vanilla Minecraft, zombies will bang on doors, but a player or player entity would normally just open it. This figure was deliberately punching the door, over and over, making it shudder but not break. We were on normal difficulty, where doors don't break. The sound was jarring. Thump, thump. With each hit, I flinched, steeling myself. I swung the door open mid-punch, and lunged forward with my iron sword. Swipe. I struck the figure. It made the hurt sound of a player taking damage. The thing recoiled, now definitely staring at me with its blank face. Jay's skin had neutral eyes, which somehow looked soulless in that moment. It did not hit back. Instead, it abruptly teleported backward several blocks, as an Enderman would. There was no particle effect, no sound. One moment it was right in front of me. The next it blinked, and stood by the statue again.
My chat box then bloomed with a message from Jay. "Leave now." Just 2 words. Before I could even react to that, another message appeared from Jay. "You are not welcome." I heard Jay on Skype mutter, "Oh my god." He was as stunned as I was to see himself speaking words he didn't type. My hands were sweating so much I could barely keep hold of my mouse.
I tried to respond in chat, typing, "Who are you?" and hitting enter. The moment my message went through, the imposter Jai teleported again, this time disappearing entirely from view. The player list still showed his name, but we couldn't see where the entity went. I looked all around frantically. A flash of movement on the roof of the storage cabin caught my eye. There it was. The intruder had somehow jumped or teleported onto the roof I had just been standing under. It peered down at me from the edge for a split second, then darted out of sight as I moved. It was toying with me. This felt like a nightmare version of hide and seek. I backed into the center of the well-lit square, making sure no structure was at my back. Spinning slowly, I tried to cover all angles. My nerves were on a knife's edge. Over the call, Jay was silent, but I could almost hear his heart pounding too. Nothing moved. It was quiet. The other Jay's name still lingered in the player list, but no sign of the avatar. I swallowed hard. "Maybe log out," Jay finally whispered. I nodded to myself. Maybe that was wise. However, before I could open the menu, the town's central statue, a stone sculpture of a knight, suddenly began to disintegrate. I gasped as one by one the stone blocks that made up the statue's base and body popped out of existence, as if being mined at incredible speed by an invisible force. Block after block vanished, rapid pop pop, leaving nothing but floating stone debris on the ground. In less than a few seconds, our beloved statue was reduced to rubble. At the exact same time, my game console, the text chat area, started flooding with the message, "Leave, leave, leave," repeating, spamming, as though someone held down a broken record of that word through Jay's account. The spam was so fast, it filled the entire chat log, letters blurring together. I didn't need any further convincing. In a blind panic, I hit the disconnect button. The world saving screen came up, and then I was back in the main menu. My Skype stream to Jay cut off. With the game, we both sat there in stunned silence, staring at our desktops. After a few seconds, Jay spoke up quietly. Is it gone?" I could only respond with a shaky laugh of disbelief. We were both in shock. We checked the server console. Since it was running on my friend's machine, we had access. The log showed that Jai's account had indeed joined and left, but with no associated IP address, which shouldn't be possible. It was as if the server registered a ghost player. We triple-checked our whitelist and security. No unknown names, and Jai's account was secure. He even changed his password immediately afterward, just in case. To this day, we have no explanation for what we witnessed. The other 3 friends on our server eventually heard our story, and while a couple were skeptical or thought we hallucinated, we showed them the destroyed statue and the arrow I found, which I suspected might have been a clue of the entity's presence. In the end, we made a copy of the world, just to have a record, and then wiped and reset the server out of fear. We never encountered something like that again. Sometimes I wonder if it was some elaborate prank that one of my friends pulled off by secretly giving someone else access. But Jay's genuine fear and the sheer strangeness of how the ghost player acted convinced me it wasn't a hoax from our side. Whether it was a hacker with a supernatural flair or something truly paranormal bleeding through the code, I'll never be sure. But whenever I play multiplayer now, especially alone on a server, I constantly tab the player list to make sure no unexpected guests show up. And if I ever see a clone of myself or a friend appear out of nowhere, you can bet I will leave immediately, just as the messages demanded. Encounters with unseen or duplicate players serve as a stark reminder, even in a multiplayer world meant only for friends, there can be intruders beyond our understanding. But not all Minecraft horror stories stem from mysterious entities. Some arise from the world itself seeming to turn on the player. Our next chronicle explores a once peaceful Pocket Edition world that began to unravel with inexplicable phenomena, as if cursed from within. Chapter 5: The Cursed World. A few years ago, I maintained a long-running Minecraft Pocket Edition world on my tablet, a shared survival realm where my close friends and I would play side by side via local multiplayer. It started out as our little utopia. We built a cozy village together, complete with a central plaza, farms, and individual cottages for each of us. For the better part of a year, everything was normal and fun. We'd hop into that world a few times a week, after school, exploring and expanding our community. Then, one fateful day, the world seemed to change. 4 of us were playing that afternoon, gathering resources in a deep mine shaft we had dug near the village. We were descending a long staircase tunnel we carved into the stone, laughing and chatting as we went. Torches in hand, I was leading the way. 2 friends followed, and one friend, I'll call him Dan, was at the rear. As we reached a certain point in the staircase, Dan suddenly blurted out, "Ow, quit it." He thought one of us in front had turned and smacked him. PvP was on, but we hadn't touched him. We were all walking in a single file. He insisted someone hit him, because he took damage. The rest of us denied it. A bit baffled, we resumed walking, and a moment later, another friend yelped. He too had been hit by seemingly nothing, right as he stepped on the exact same stair block where Dan had been attacked. We all froze. I cautiously moved back to that spot, testing it. The whack. I felt an invisible punch land on me. I jumped back, my health down by 1 heart. It was as if an unseen entity were camping that single stair, smacking whoever passed. The block was beside a small alcove in the tunnel wall, a hole we had dug out while searching for ores. Peering into the darkness of that little side pocket, I felt an uncanny sense that something unseen was standing there, guarding the stair. We nervously joked about a ghost miner not wanting us to pass by to avoid the mysterious hits. We ended up mining around that stair, creating a short bypass tunnel through the wall. From then on, that particular section of the mine became taboo. We'd sprint past whenever we had to go through, half expecting an invisible punch each time. When we emerged back on the surface later, we found the village above unsettled in its own way. One of my friends exclaimed, in confusion over voice chat, "Why are half the trees missing?" We looked around and indeed saw that in a small grove behind our houses, several trees were inexplicably missing their bottom halves. The trunks had been sheared off at waist height, leaving hovering top halves of trees and a scattering of leaf blocks slowly decaying. We were perplexed. None of us had done that. Why would we ever cut trees in such a bizarre way? It was as if something had sliced through the forest with an invisible laser. Shrugging it off as a glitch, perhaps a world-save error, we cleaned up the floating trees and replanted saplings. But the oddities only escalated. Over the next few in-game days, more unexplainable changes occurred around our base. We woke up one morning to find random 1x1 holes peppered across the ground, perfectly square pits dropping 3 or 4 blocks deep, dotting areas near the edges of our village. It looked almost like someone had been running around with a shovel, digging single-block graves here and there. Each of us swore we hadn't done anything of the sort. We filled them in, scratching our heads. On another occasion, one of my friends went to tend our livestock pen and found that the fences had been bizarrely rearranged. The enclosure was now open, and some animals had wandered out, while others were somehow penned into tiny isolated fence loops that had appeared in the pasture. It was as if someone drunkenly removed and placed fence posts at random in the night. This was a private world on a closed network. No outsiders could join, and none of us would sabotage our own farm. We fixed the pen, though a few cows and sheep were lost to the wild. Our calm haven was rapidly gaining a reputation among us for being haunted or cursed. We half-heartedly blamed world corruption or some pocket edition bug, but deep down it truly spooked us. The pivotal moment, the one that turned our unease into real fear, came a few sessions later. We had a lovely large forest just beyond our village, separating us from the ocean on one side. One afternoon, we ventured to that forest's far end to gather wood. To our astonishment, we found that the entire stretch of forest bordering a particular small pond was gone. Not a single tree stood where a lush tree line had been. What remained were stumps and a swath of coarse dirt. Even the grass on the ground was inexplicably replaced with plain dirt blocks in a rough circle around the pond. It was as if some catastrophe had swept the area, every tree uprooted or disintegrated, Grass ruined, the pond sat in the middle of this patch of barrenness, water shimmering innocently. Beside the pond we discovered something even stranger, a small dirt shack, literally a few blocks of dirt, that none of us had built. It was like a tiny hut or cube, roughly 3 by 3 blocks and hollow inside, just sitting there on the side of the now cleared grove. We gathered around the dirt structure, perplexed. It had no door, just a single opening on one side. Inside, there was nothing but darkness, and one floor block of sand, as if a random patch from the pond shore had been transplanted. At this point, the joking stopped. We felt genuinely unnerved. It was as if some unspeaking presence was terraforming and building in our world when we weren't around, and not with any logic or pattern we could discern, just chaotic changes. The forest wiped out. The weird dirt hut, it gave off vibes of some entity trying to build a rudimentary shelter or mark its territory. We didn't dare dismantle that hut. In fact, one friend suggested we leave it and not anger whatever thing might have made it. We half laughed, half seriously agreed. From then on, we avoided that corner of the map entirely, dubbing it the Scorched Grove. Of course, as luck would have it, even avoidance was no guarantee of safety. A few play sessions later, things went from bad to worse. We noticed the boundaries of our world, the edge beyond which Pocket Edition would previously not let us venture, since back then worlds were finite, seemed to be closing in. Our village was originally well within the middle of the map. But one evening, half of our village was inexplicably cut off by what appeared to be an invisible world border that had shrunk. The effect was jarring. You'd walk toward the missing part of town and suddenly hit an unseen wall, and beyond it was nothingness, the endless void. It was like a chunk error, but one that moved to swallow part of our builds. We lost half of our communal storage building and part of a crop field to that encroaching void. We were devastated and frightened. How could the world itself just start caving in on us? Only one of us could still go past this new boundary. Bizarrely, our friend who hosted the world on his device, he found he could ghost through where the border showed for us and see the missing structures still intact on his side. But for the rest of us, those builds were unreachable, beyond a solid wall of nothing. It was as if reality was breaking down in our game, piece by piece, centered ominously around that cursed pond area and expanding outward. Finally, the world became practically unplayable. Upon spawning, and for what turned out to be our final session in that realm, we were greeted by immediate death. Our characters would spawn high in the sky and fall to their demise repeatedly. After a few futile attempts and respawns, we realized all our spawn points had somehow been reset to a glitched location way above our village. Whether this was due to the border or something else interfering, it meant we couldn't even stay alive long enough to fix anything. We collectively had to accept that this beloved world of ours had been irreversibly cursed or corrupted. Begrudgingly, we retired it, but the experiences left a deep impression on us. We still talk about the ghost in our MCE world as a kind of local legend. We never pinpointed a cause. Some speculated it was just a cascade of software bugs. Pocket Edition was a bit unstable back then, but the sequence and nature of events, especially that dirt hut and the feeling of being attacked on the mineshaft stair, felt strangely deliberate, as if the game was an animal thrashing under the influence of something we couldn't see. In hindsight, I sometimes think perhaps multiple glitches coincided and created the illusion of a haunting. But another part of me wonders, did we stumble onto something we shouldn't have? A seed that had bizarre generation properties? Or did our constant playing trigger a 1-in-a-million error that gave life to some routines that started altering our world unpredictably? we'll likely never know. We have that world backed up. Well, the last semi-stable version of it, but we've been too wary to ever reopen it. The once thriving village now lies abandoned in that save file, if some presence did curse it. I hope it's satisfied now that we're gone. The Pocket Edition menu simply labels the world file with its name, but in our minds we've labeled it with a warning: do not enter, cursed, and indeed, none of us have dared to step foot back in there, not after witnessing a peaceful realm literally tear itself apart before our eyes with no reasonable explanation. Whether one believes it was code corruption or a curse, that Pocket Edition world taught us a lesson. Sometimes a Minecraft world itself can feel actively hostile, as if urging its players to leave. But not all threats are intangible. Some loom in the distance. At the very edges of Minecraft's generated terrain, our next story follows a player's harrowing journey to the FarLands, the bizarre glitched lands at the world's end, where the environment itself becomes a surreal nightmare, and something unfathomable may have been waiting in the shadows.
Chapter 6: Beyond the FarLands.
Ever since I learned about the legendary FarLands, the fractured terrain that exists at the extreme edges of older Minecraft worlds, I became obsessed with reaching them legitimately. In Minecraft Beta, around 12 million blocks from spawn, the world generation code would start to fail, producing towering, otherworldly formations of fragmented land. People described it as weird, but I always felt there was an eerie aura to the idea, a place where the game's normal rules fell apart. In single-player survival Beta 1.7, an old version, I made it my mission to journey on foot to the FarLands. It was an insane quest. Most thought it impossible without cheats, but I was stubborn and curious. I walked and boated and tunneled for weeks of real time, passing villages and biomes, crossing the vast in-game continents. As I progressed many millions of blocks out, I began noticing minor oddities: passive mobs behaving strangely, groups of animals clustering in unnaturally tight bunches or spinning in place, lighting glitches becoming more frequent, sudden patches of darkness at noon, and the precision of my movements felt off. There was a subtle jitter at times, as if the world was trembling the farther out I went. I kept a journal in-game, writing in books for roleplay immersion, I guess. My early entries were excited, detailing normal landscapes, but as the X and Z coordinates climbed into the millions, the tone of my notes changed. I wrote about seeing entire chunks misaligned, like a chunk that had a slice of ocean cutting through a forest section, or a hill abruptly cut in half, in a straight line. These world generation hiccups increased in frequency. The further I trekked, by about 10 million blocks out, the terrain was frequently jarring. Long vertical walls of stone and dirt slicing through biomes, occasional floating water sources pouring out from mid-air, and tunnels that appeared unnaturally straight, as if carved by something. Nights in these far reaches felt especially unsettling, because the terrain was so haphazard. I often encountered sudden caves or overhangs from which monsters would emerge without warning. I had some close calls with creepers dropping straight down from glitchy overhangs above. One particular midnight, as I navigated a chaotic landscape of intersecting ravines, I could swear I heard footsteps behind me that didn't match any known mob's pattern. They would stop when I stopped and resume when I moved. Yet whenever I spun around, nothing was there except the dimly lit crags and peaks of the broken land. I told myself it was likely a zombie pathfinding awkwardly on the jagged terrain, or the echo of my own steps glitching, but I took note of it in my journal all the same, marking it as footsteps in darkness, no source visible. Finally, after long, arduous travel, I neared the coordinates of the FarLands. around 12,550 ACE 21 on one axis, to be precise. The environment had grown increasingly bizarre. The ground beneath me formed a sort of Swiss cheese pattern, with holes and pillars everywhere. The game was lagging, chunk loading was slow and choppy. Then, as I walked onward, the fog ahead took on a strange shape. It wasn't a normal smooth fog. It looked almost like a solid grey wall looming. My heart pounded. This was it. The FarLands wall was generating. I stepped forward and the fog cleared to reveal one of the most mesmerizing and terrifying sights. An enormous jagged wall of stone, dirt, and ores stretching infinitely in both directions, up to the height limit, and beyond into a wavy, distorted sky. This was the FarLands. It looked like the world had cracked, and a fragmented labyrinth had erupted forth. Caverns and voids riddled the wall, creating a Swiss cheese-like facade. Waterfalls and lava falls dripped out of some holes. The geometry was both stunning and alien, with parts of the wall seemingly levitating, defying physics. It towered over me like a silent colossus. I approached a cavernous opening at the base of the FarLands wall. Inside, the normally gentle ambient cave sounds were wobbling due to the performance issues. Every now and then a noise would stretch or echo oddly, giving a ghostly vibe. I ventured into one of the Swiss cheese tunnels. This place truly felt like Minecraft's edge, like I had stepped beyond the veil of the normal world. As I navigated through narrow passages and immense hollow chambers within the FarLands, I encountered something unexpected: villager sounds. You know, the familiar grunts. They echoed faintly in the distance of those giant caverns. That made no sense. This was beta Minecraft. Villagers didn't even exist as a mob yet. They were introduced later, and even if they had, there was no village or any structure that could support villagers out here. The sound occurred intermittently, always around a corner or through a wall. I even caught what sounded like the muffled Herb voice clip, as if two villagers were conversing behind the rocky partitions. I stood still in one chamber, turning slowly to pinpoint the source, but the echoes made it impossible. I admit, at this point, a deep unease settled in me. I'd expected emptiness and glitchy landscapes, not phantom village noises. I wrote nervously in my journal. Heard voices, like villagers. Impossible. Sound engine bug. I pressed on, telling myself it must be some weird artifact of the sound system freaking out due to coordinates. Maybe memory was leaking and causing random sound bites to play. Continuing through the grid-like corridors of the FarLands was like exploring a monumental, abandoned fortress, one built by no hand, but by the errors in code. I kept torches on the ground to mark my way, conscious that getting lost here could be fatal. At times I saw clusters of mobs, groups of creepers and skeletons, but they behaved oddly. In one wide hollow, I witnessed a cluster of 4 skeletons just standing together, not shooting, facing the same direction, almost as if frozen. I carefully skirted them. They never reacted, even when I tossed a pebble, a dropped item, toward them. It was as if they didn't see me at all. Their heads didn't turn. They eventually did start moving, but aimlessly, never engaging. I logged that as another oddity. Deep within one of the FarLands caverns, I stumbled upon something chilling that made me question my sanity. A single sign posted on a cobblestone block. Yes, a hand-placed sign, with text. It was tucked in a narrow corridor that opened into a small, dead-end grotto. The cobblestone itself was strange. Why a lone cobblestone block? There was no dungeon nearby. No reason for cobble to be there. My skin prickled as I approached. The sign had one word on it. Turn. That's all. Just turn. I read it a few times, my mind racing. Turn. Turn back. Turn around? Was someone telling me to turn around at that very moment? I whirled, sword drawn, heart in my throat. There was nothing behind me but the dark tunnel leading back to the labyrinth. I quickly aimed my crosshair at the sign again, breaking it in the cobblestone block in one swing. I wanted to take it as evidence anyway. The sign popped off, itemized into my inventory. I felt simultaneously relieved. If it was gone, maybe whatever put it would leave, and more afraid. The fact it existed at all.
I double-checked. I was in single-player offline mode. I was. No one else could possibly be here. Could it have been random data interpreted as a sign? The game had been acting funky. Some glitch could conceivably have placed a sign with junk text. But turn is a very specific and relevant word in plain English. It felt intentional.
Decided I'd seen enough inside the FarLands for now. My inventory was full of unique blocks. I had collected some glitched dirt and anvil-like half-blocks to analyze later. Night was falling outside in the normal world beyond this wall. The idea of spending a night inside the FarLands corridors now unnerved me more than it thrilled me. So I made my way out, or at least I attempted to.
That's when I faced a terrifying realization. I was lost. The corridors of the FarLands were a maze, and in my fascination, I had ventured too deep without marking a clear path. The torches I'd placed were sometimes on floors, sometimes walls, and they branched where I had explored side passages. I'd also encountered many naturally generated torches, from lava or weird mineshaft fragments, which confused matters. Drifting fog and the irregular shapes made landmarks hard to pinpoint. I tried to retrace steps, but seemed to loop or end up in entirely unfamiliar chambers. As I wandered, anxiety mounting, I began to hear those phantom footsteps again, the same ones I'd heard in the ravine nights ago, only now they were echoing in the enclosed stone halls, so it was even harder to dismiss as imagination. At one point I stopped walking, but clearly heard an extra set of steps take 1, 2, 3 steps after me, then halt. It sounded a bit like the clack of a player's feet on stone. I swung my camera behind me. Of course, nothing. I even dug quickly into the wall behind, wondering if some invisible entity was trapped there. Nothing. Just solid block. The darkness in these halls was oppressive. I crafted more torches and spammed them around. To feel safer, the flickering light and weird geometry played tricks on my eyes. I kept thinking I saw a human shape at the edge of my vision, peeking from around a corner. But whenever I'd focus, it was just odd blocks or shadows. The turn sign weighed heavy in my inventory. Had I angered whatever wrote it by not heeding its warning? Eventually, after wandering for what felt like hours, and likely was, given I was playing into the late night in real life, I caught sight of a gently pulsing purple glow in a far tunnel. I moved toward it and nearly cried out in relief. It was the night sky, through a lattice of the FarLands wall openings, and the glow was from some exposed nether portal blocks. The FarLands sometimes weirdly had portal tiles or end portal frames, generating them by glitch. This meant I had a route to the surface near me. Scrambling up a series of ledges, I emerged onto the face of the FarLands wall like a mountaineer scaling a cliff, and beheld the outside world again. Below me stretched a surreal panorama, the normal world plains at night, lit by moonlight, with the shadow of the incomprehensible FarLands wall stretching into darkness. It should have comforted me to see normal terrain again, but something was off. The normally busy night mobs were absent on the plain. No zombies, no spiders. I didn't even see passive animals, just an expanse of empty terrain. It was as if the game decided not to spawn anything this close to the FarLands. The only movement was far off, by a stand of dead-looking trees. I glimpsed what looked like a single-player-sized figure, pacing slowly. My heart leapt. Could that be an actual person? Or was it another trick of light? I watched intently from my high perch. The figure moved oddly, stuttering, and then gliding a few blocks, then stuttering again. I thought it might be a zombie with glitchy AI, but it seemed too tall, and there was no green hue. It was just a dark silhouette, alone, in silence. I wasn't sure if I should climb down and approach, or stay hidden. Remembering the sign's warning, I decided not to confront whatever that was. Instead, I carefully descended on the opposite side of the wall, using water bucket tricks to safely get down. I put as much distance as I could between me and the FarLands structure until I reached relatively normal rolling hills. I set up a camp in a shallow cave and finally allowed myself to log off for the night. I was utterly exhausted and shaken. After that expedition, I had mixed feelings. Triumph at reaching the FarLands, but also a lingering sense of dread about what I experienced there. I had gathered physical evidence, glitched blocks, that sign now placed in a frame in my main base, and pages of journal notes, but I wasn't sure I wanted to return anytime soon. In the following days, I researched if anyone else had encountered weird phenomena in the FarLands. Most talked about the terrain, some about performance issues or odd mob behavior, but I found nothing about signs or voices. It was possible no one spent as long there as I did to witness such things, or if they did, they didn't live to tell the tale in-game.
Yeah, I still wonder about that figure I saw on the plain, pacing alone. Some nights I have a dream of the FarLands. In the dream I wander the endless halls and I see torches placed that I know I didn't put, and I hear of villagers echo around each corner. Then I find the sign I broke has been replaced deeper in, with a new message. You were warned. I always wake up at that point.
In truth, I haven't gone back to that far-flung world border since. I sometimes fear that if I reopen that save and travel there again, I might find more signs, or worse, I might turn a corner and actually come face to face with whoever or whatever was trailing me and leaving me messages. The rational part of me says it was all a combination of glitches, sound bugs, chunk errors, leftover data from some previous world on my machine. Manifesting a sign, is that even possible? But a small irrational part of me whispers that maybe the FarLands were not meant for players, and in pushing into those broken parts of creation, I trespassed on something old and unfriendly. Whatever the truth, my advice to adventurers is this: if you venture beyond the known world, and the very code begins to fray, be wary. The FarLands hold wonders, yes, but perhaps also watchers in the fog, and they may not take kindly to intrusion. Sometimes it might be best to turn back. Venturing to the broken fringe of the world can feel like stepping into another realm, one where even Minecraft's familiar rules falter, and something unknown might stir. But you don't have to travel to the world's end to find a haunting presence. Sometimes it's embedded in the world's seed itself, as our next story about the infamous Seed 66 will show. Many have dismissed the tales around this seed as mere superstition, but the account that follows might make even skeptics reconsider. Chapter 7: The Devil's Seed. Curiosity can lead Minecraft players into strange situations. That's what happened to me when I decided to start a new world using the Seed 666. I'm not particularly superstitious, but the number is infamous, often called the number of the beast, and I'd heard playground rumors that the Seed 6666 in Minecraft Java Edition was cursed or haunted. There were YouTube videos claiming Herobrine sightings or weird occurrences on that seed. I figured most of that was just creepypasta nonsense, but being a horror fan, I thought it'd be entertaining to try it myself on a survival single-player run. I created a new world, typed 666 into the seed box, set the game to survival hard mode, and generated the terrain. The spawn was unremarkable. At first glance, a temperate forest by a lake, with some hills in the distance, daylight, bright and cheery, birds chirping. I had an ambient sounds mod that added slight bird noises during day. I punched trees, made a crafting table, and settled into the normal early game routine. For the first 10 minutes or so, nothing strange happened. I did notice, however, an unusual scarcity of animals. Typically, forests have a few pigs, cows or chickens wandering, but I didn't see any around spawn. Eventually I heard a chicken cluck, but it was just one, perched on a lone rock. It gave me a bit of food and feather, but no other animals turned up. Alright, I thought, I'll have to move to find more food, so I ventured further from spawn. About midday in-game, I crested a hill and discovered a large ravine, cutting through the forest floor. Eager to gather some easy iron, I carefully made my way down into it. The ravine was narrow and deep, with a trickle of water flowing along the bottom. Strangely, I saw no ores exposed on the walls, not even coal. That's statistically unlikely. Usually you see at least coal in any ravine. The stone walls were bare and bleak. I shrugged it off as RNG bad luck. Down in the ravine's shadow, I felt a slight sense of unease, probably because I hadn't yet made torches, and it was dark. I started mining into the side to create a small safe space and furnace some wood into charcoal. As I was hollowing out a nook, I heard a noise that made me stop cold. A faint hiss. My immediate thought was, creeper, and I whirled around, heart pounding, but nothing was there. The ravine ledge behind me was empty. I even peeked up at the top edges. No green threat looming, and I was too far from the water flow for it to be that kind of hissing. It had sounded so close, as if a creeper had ignited right behind me for a half second, then vanished. I wondered if perhaps a creeper somewhere else triggered on a skeleton. Sometimes mobs aggro each other, and you hear sounds even if they're not after you. Regardless, I sealed my little cave hole with dirt and stayed put until I had some torches and a stone sword. As night was falling, I decided to leave the ravine and build a shelter on the surface. I wasn't ready to deal with mobs in a confined space down there. On my way out, placing torches to prevent surprises, I found something that made me pause. On a ledge near where I heard the hiss, there was a single block of mossy cobblestone embedded in the stone wall. It looked like a random block, not part of a full dungeon structure, and indeed no other dungeon blocks were around it. It's not unheard of to find a dungeon that intersects a ravine, but typically you'd see a larger section of mossy or a spawner cage. Here was just one mossy block by itself. I dug around it. No spawner or additional mossy, just regular stone surrounding. That was truly odd. It was as if one block of a dungeon had been placed there and nothing else. I mined it and took it with me. It felt like a trophy of the strange. That time on Seed 666 proved to be more tense than usual. I built a small wooden hut by the lake and started doing usual night mining, digging a staircase mine inside my home. Mobs spawned outside, and I could hear their muffled groans and clattering bones. At one point I heard the noises of a spider, but layered beneath its usual hisses was something that sounded almost like a low whisper. I went outside to dispatch the spider. String for a bow is always useful. The spider skittered toward me. I smacked it down, but as I did, I swear I heard a very faint "see you" in that same whispery tone, almost indistinguishable from the wind. I literally stood there for a few seconds, trying to discern if I really heard words, or just the strange pitch of the spider's sounds combined with the ambient mod. In the end, I told myself it was my imagination, but I was definitely on edge now, every nerve alert. On the second day, I explored further. I found a cave system and started lighting it up. The cave's shape was peculiar. It had unnaturally straight tunnels in parts. It almost looked like a chunk error, or that it had been tunnel bored by the game. Roughly 2 wide by 2 high tunnels would abruptly start and end within the cave, as if generated mine shaft, I thought at first. But there were no wooden supports or mine rails, just empty small corridors branching off the main cave, dead-ending after 20 blocks or so. I even wondered, did ravine and cave noise somehow carve out these straight lines? It didn't seem plausible. The effect was that it felt like wandering hallways, which made my skin crawl. Venturing down one of these straight corridors, I saw at the end a small patch of something on the floor. Shining my torch, I realized it was redstone dust. Several pieces placed on the ground forming an irregular trail. This was beyond bizarre. Redstone dust doesn't generate naturally on the ground, only as ore in the walls, and I hadn't placed it. I had barely done any mining yet, let alone have redstone dust. It looked as if someone had spilled or deliberately laid out a few pieces of redstone in a rough path. The trail didn't lead anywhere particularly noteworthy. It just stopped after 5 or 6 pieces. I touched one, picking it up, and the others stayed, meaning it was actually placed dust, not item drops. The sight of that bright blood-red dust against the cave floor made my heart thump. Who could have placed it? I was alone in this world. I collected the dust and hurried out of that cave. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. Maybe the legends about this seed had some truth. The thought of Herobrine crossed my mind, but I tried to be rational. Perhaps some glitch with abandoned mine shafts caused a fragment of a shaft with some loot, like redstone, to generate weirdly, or a weird duplication glitch from my inventory, though I hadn't had redstone prior. I kept these findings in a chest back at my hut, as evidence to examine later. By day 3, I was growing both paranoid and resolute. I decided to confront the strangeness by exploring at night intentionally. Usually I'd sleep or mine, but I wanted to see if anything happened when I was out in the open. I crafted full iron gear. I had found some iron finally in that cave, and plenty of weapons. Night fell. I wandered the forest near my base, careful of creepers. Strangely, again mob presence was thin. A few zombies here or there, but large swathes of area with nothing, which is unusual on hard difficulty. Midnight. Minecraft time. The full moon was out, giving the woods an eerie glow. That's when I saw it. On a distant hill, a solitary figure standing. It looked like a player. The shape and stance were unmistakable, but it was too far to see details. And of course, it had no name tag. Not that I expected one in single player. I stopped and stared. It didn't move, just stood looking down at the terrain, almost directly at where I was, though I couldn't be sure it was looking at me. I carefully inched forward, sword drawn, keeping a row of trees between me and it, as cover in case it was some new mob or trick. Lightning suddenly flashed. A thunderstorm I hadn't noticed was rolling in. For a split second, the landscape lit up starkly white, and in that flash, I saw the figure right in front of me. Much closer than before, maybe only 20 blocks away just beyond the nearest oak. Startled, I ducked behind the trunk, instinctively. How did it cover so much ground, so fast? Or had it been a trick of perspective, and it was always there. My heart was hammering. I peeked around the tree. Nothing. The hillside was empty. Another flash of lightning, revealing nothing but swaying grass and raindrops. The figure was gone. At this point, I was convinced I had seen Herobrine or some ghost player, and the legends about Seed 666 felt more real than ever. I even typed in chat, half expecting a response. Hello? Of course, nothing answered. By now, rain was pouring and thunder rolling, so I retreated to my base, thoroughly spooked. I spent the rest of that night hunkered down, watching through the window, but saw no more sign of the mysterious figure. The next morning, I stepped outside to a grim sight. Right at the edge of the pond, by my house, there was a signpost sticking out of the mud. I swear it was not there before. With dread, I approached it, knowing I'd likely find a message. Indeed, on the sign, in jagged writing, was the phrase, "I see you." I must have jumped a foot back upon reading that. The first thought in my mind, that flash of lightning when I saw the figure up close. The figure must have seen me too. Whomever or whatever it was, it left this sign here, literally overnight. In single player, the game doesn't run when you log out, so it had to have been placed while I was still online, presumably during the storm when I was hiding inside or just before I got back, but I had not noticed it in the dark. I took the sign down and stored it. That is when I decided to stop playing on Seed 666. For a while, I made copies of the world file in case I wanted to investigate further, but my nerves were somewhat shot. The evidence I had amassed was chilling. A lone mossy cobble, a trail of redstone, an encounter with a phantom silhouette, and a sign saying "I see you." Some friends I later told were skeptical. They thought maybe I staged it or it was a mod prank. But I know the truth. I was running vanilla, aside from ambient sounds, which wouldn't cause that. The more supernatural inclined friends said it was maybe the devil or a demon mocking me via the game. One joked, "It's Herobrine's brother, you know, the devil." But those who've played on this seed have reported eerily similar things. Mysterious signs, torches, or redstone appearing, strange noises, low mob counts, as if something is scaring them off. It's almost like the world itself is influenced by the evil connotation of its seed number. I still have that world ready to go, if I ever get the courage to return. Part of me wants to push further, maybe travel to the coordinates 666, 666, both axes, or something, and see if there's a lair of whatever is haunting the seed. But another part of me remembers the feeling when I read that sign by my home, as if an unseen pair of eyes were glaring at me through the screen. For now, I've left the devil's seed alone. One thing's for certain. The next time someone on a forum asks about spooky seeds to try, I'll share my story of Seed 66 and caution them. If you go looking for horror in Minecraft, you just might find it, and you might not like it when it watches you back. Urban legends often begin with a single strange account, and Seed 666 has accumulated plenty. Yet sometimes, Minecraft's own designed quirks can unsettle players. The game's lore and music hold secrets too. Our next short story shifts focus to a much discussed in-game item, the broken music disc 11. Many have wondered about the origins of the static and noises on this disc. When a player in our next tale finds this disc in-game, it leads to an experience that blurs the line between game audio and something far more sinister. Chapter 8. The Broken Disc. It was my 5th night in a new survival world, and I had established a humble base at the edge of a dense taiga biome. Earlier that day, I had stumbled across a partially buried dungeon in the side of a mossy hill, the cobblestone almost hidden by ferns and underbrush. Fighting off a couple of zombies that spawned from it, I managed to secure the area and break the spawner. In the chest loot, besides some iron and bread, was something that made me grin with excitement. A music disc. It was the cracked, almost fully black disc, the one labeled 11 in the game files, the famous broken disc, with creepy sounds. I'd heard it before from YouTube videos, but never actually found it legitimately in survival until now. Being something of a Minecraft lore enthusiast, I was eager to play this disc in-game and hear it for myself directly. I quickly crafted a jukebox back home, using a precious diamond, but I figured it was worth it for the ambiance. Night had fallen. Rain began to patter on the roof of my little base, a gentle storm rolling in. Perfect atmosphere for a spooky record. I popped 11 into the jukebox and stood back. That now familiar static started to play. The disc's scratchy noise filling the room. The sound of a person coughing and running on stone. The weird clicking. All those usual elements were there. I found myself tensing up as the unnerving sounds echoed, even though I knew what to expect. There's something uniquely unsettling about hearing it in the world, as opposed to a video. The way the sound emits from the jukebox block and fades into the environment made it feel like the noises were happening in the dark forest outside my walls. I listened intently. In the disc's recording, it's like someone is frantically doing something, possibly crafting or fiddling with flint and steel. There's that telltale clicking, then heavy breathing. But as the disc neared its end, I heard something new under the windy static. For just a second, I thought I caught a whisper, a tone that was not part of the typical disc 11 sounds. It was extremely brief and unclear. The disc ended with its usual shrill scratching halt. Did I just imagine an extra whisper? Perhaps it was thunder or wind from the storm that coincidentally sounded like a voice. I left the disc in the jukebox and went about, smelting some ores. The rain outside picked up, thunder flashing. Maybe I should sleep till morning to clear it, I thought. But then, the jukebox started playing again, on its own. I was across the room, not even near it. Yet, the broken disc static began anew. Abruptly, making me jump, I cautiously walked toward it. Could it be a redstone glitch? Lighting strike triggering it? It was bizarre. Jukeboxes only play when you insert a disc or provide redstone signal to loop, and I had done neither. This time, as it played, the sounds were different. The static was heavier, more distorted. The footsteps sounded slower, as if dragged, and then I heard it clearly. A voice speaking low, garbled by static, but human sounding. It was not coming from my surroundings, like not a zombie noise or something. It was definitely tied to the disc audio. As it fluctuated with the static, I couldn't make out words at first, just the presence of a voice. I stared at the jukebox, both horrified and mesmerized. The disc 11 in Minecraft has no intelligible speech. This I knew, but I was hearing something that defied that fact. I turned up my volume and leaned in. Among the hissing and crackling, a fragmented phrase emerged. The faint, drawn out. It sounded like a man's voice pleading. The hair on the back of my neck raised. Help me. Who? The character from the recording. Was this an Easter egg that I never knew of, or something else? Lightning struck extremely close by. The flash and immediate boom made me yelp. I ran to the window. A tree just outside was set ablaze by the strike, burning in the rain. As my eyes adjusted from the flash, I saw something out there by that tree that made my blood run cold. A figure, just for a moment. It looked like a player with a dark torso and light limbs, but it was there and gone so quickly between lightning and the subsequent darkness that I couldn't be sure. It looked a bit like the stylized depiction of the Disc 11 figure. Some players imagine the Disc 11 noises are from a crouched old Steve-like character. My rational mind said it was just the afterimage of the burning tree, and a trick of the light. I snapped my gaze back to the jukebox. The disc had fallen silent again, ending its playback. I was shaken. The combination of the voice and that glimpse outside had me thoroughly spooked. I double-checked that I was on single-player Others, and that no mob that could resemble a player was around. None. Besides, no mob looks exactly human except zombies, and it wasn't a zombie. I armed myself, stepped out, and extinguished the tree fire. Nothing else unusual. When I went back in, I decided perhaps I should destroy the disc. Maybe it was cursed. It sounds silly, but in that moment, I truly felt like I had something in my possession that invited an unwanted presence. I took the 11 disc out of the jukebox and tossed it into my furnace's fire, then left it there to despawn burn. I even broke the jukebox for good measure. The rest of the night passed quietly, save for the storm blowing over. Eventually I managed to sleep. In real life I needed a break. Later on I searched online to see if anyone had experienced a music disc acting strangely or playing extra sounds. I found no account exactly like mine. Plenty of people find Disc 11 creepy, but no one mentioned it playing by itself or containing a voice saying, "Help me." It left me with so many questions. Was it a glitch caused by the thunder? Did I hallucinate the whisper because I was immersing myself too much in the creepy vibe? Or could it be that Mojang hit a super rare occurrence in the game for Disc 11 on certain conditions, like during thunderstorms the disc might react? I might never know, but I do know that after that incident, the ambience of the taiga around my base felt different. I'd sometimes hear what I thought were faint coughing sounds, similar to those on the disc when I was mining alone, causing me to spin around thinking a mob was there. But nothing. The experience with the broken disc made me much more jumpy in that world, as if I had tapped into something paranormal. I've since started a new world elsewhere to get a fresh start, leaving that base and its mysterious happenings behind. Yet I'll never forget that distorted plea for help emanating from my game, nor the silhouette by the burning tree. Now whenever I find a music disc in Minecraft, I hesitate a moment before playing it, especially if it's Disc 11. Some things, once heard, cannot be unheard, and in the quiet crackle of a broken record, I listened to what felt like the ghost of Minecraft's past. The echoes of Disc 11 remind us that even the intended creepiness of the game can sometimes cross into the truly unexplainable. Whether it was a glitch or a ghost in the code, it left a mark on that player's memory. Finally, as we draw this compilation of frightening tales to a close, we end on a story that combines several of the themes we've seen: a haunted multiplayer server, mysterious structures, and a protagonist who may have ventured one step too far in provoking the unknown. Prepare for one last shiver as we delve into a server that seemingly tried to fight back against its players. Chapter 9. The Haunting of Eeriecraft Server. A small group of us, friends since school, set up a private Minecraft server we nicknamed Eeriecraft, half-jokingly, because we love to try horror maps and spooky mods on it. This server was mostly vanilla survival, though we'd hop on after classes to build mine and have fun with maybe a few cosmetic plugins. The world was about a month old, and fairly developed. We had a nice town, with each of us having our own decorated house, plus a shared nether hub and an XP farm. One evening, only two of us were online. Myself and my friend Lena. We were both working on separate projects. I was landscaping the town pathways. Lena was spelunking in some caves a bit farther off. We chatted over voice about normal stuff. Suddenly Lena asked, "Hey, did you come to my build and place torches or something?" I replied, "No, I'm nowhere near you." "Why?" She hesitated and then said, "It's probably nothing, but I keep finding random torches in this cave that I didn't put, and I thought maybe you had come through here before." I hadn't. I was sure I hadn't explored that area yet. We shrugged it off, with the assumption maybe one of our other friends had previously gone caving there and left them. A while later, Lena pipes up again, now sounding a bit unsettled. "So, I just found a weird tunnel, perfectly straight, 2x1, goes on for a long way. Did you strip mine near X200, Z350? I hadn't. My mines were all under my base far from there. No one else was on the server at the moment." Lena followed the tunnel, thinking maybe our friend Tom, another server member, had been branch mining and not told us. She commented how the tunnel occasionally had side rooms, like small 3x3 chambers every 30 blocks or so, empty except sometimes a single torch, an empty sign on the wall. This raised my eyebrow. An empty sign. If Tom made rest stops, why put blank signs? I decided to head over to her coordinates to see this for myself. As I traveled through the woods to get there, the weather and game turned to rain, and evening was coming. Lena was still in the tunnel, describing things as she went. She said, "There's a sign here. It's blank. Gonna break it." Then a pause. Then, it just says 1 now that I hit it, like the number 1 in parentheses. That sounded like a formatting or coding glitch, perhaps, or maybe something weird with our chat plugin interfering. By the time I got to her location, night had fallen. I found the cave entrance she had gone through, marked by a couple of cobble pillars we usually use to tag explored areas. I went in, following her torches. Deep inside, sure enough, I found the straight tunnel she mentioned. It looked freshly dug, not naturally generated. At that moment, Lena said over voice, "I swear I just saw somebody down here. I saw movement at the end of the hall." I told her I was just now entering the tunnel from the other side. I hadn't reached her yet. She went quiet, and I heard her character eating a steak, likely prepping for potential combat. I hurried along the tunnel toward her. About midway in one of those side recesses, I too found a sign on the wall. No text on it. I left it and quickly moved on. We finally met up in a wider cavern that the tunnel opened into. Lena looked relieved to see me. We typed list to see if any other usernames were on that shouldn't be. Perhaps someone hacked in, or we left the server open. Only our 2 names displayed. We decided to leave the strange tunnel. Perhaps some glitch or chunk error created it. We reasoned. As we made our way out of the cave, things got even stranger. Lena gasped in voice chat. "My inventory. What happened to my inventory?" I asked what she meant. She said a bunch of her items were gone. We both wondered if she had died or something. But she hadn't. I had not been near her, so it's not like I pranked and took her stuff. She lost some torches, a stack of iron ore, and food. We checked the ground behind us in case she accidentally dropped them. Nothing. Now we were on high alert. We left the cave into the rain-soaked night, sprinting back toward our town base to regroup. As we ran through the forest, we started seeing something that made us both stop. Around us, on various trees, were signs, lots of them. Some were blank, others had single words: turn, back, death. It was like stumbling into a haunted trail. Neither of us had placed these, obviously. The area we were in was not far from our town, a place we both knew well. and these signs were absolutely new.
Lena whispered, half joking. Is this the part where Herobrine jump scares us? I, trying to keep calm, suggested maybe one of our friends set up a prank with command blocks to detect us and place signs. But that seemed way too elaborate, and they weren't online to execute it.
We tore down a couple of the signs and bolted back to our safe, well-lit town, making sure to shut the gate and walls. We felt safer under the glow of our street lamps and golems patrolling. Perhaps the server was bugging out. The plan was to log and contact the others in the morning. However, the ordeal wasn't quite done with us yet. As we walked down the main street toward my house, we noticed something that wasn't there before. At the town fountain, someone had erected a new structure. It was a small wooden shrine of sorts, like an altar, with a book on an item frame and 2 torches on either side. This was smack in the center of our town. No way, I murmured. The book in the item frame had a creepy vibe. Its title in red text, thanks to an anvil renaming, presumably, read "Do You Believe?" Neither of us had put this here. With shaky hands, virtually, I popped the book out of the frame and opened it. It was a written book with multiple pages. The first page said, "We told you to turn back." The second page, "Now it's too late." The third just had a single line, or what looked like random gibberish, or a corrupted text string. That was it. There were no more pages, but the book had like 10 empty pages after that, as if awaiting further writing.
Lena and I were freaked out. An unknown entity had clearly been on our server, leaving messages and even stealing items. But how? And why? We double-checked our server console for any logins. Nothing besides us. We even looked for evidence of world edit or admin activity. None.
Suddenly, Lena's character was hit. She took damage and flew forward as if struck from behind. She yelped in surprise, and we both turned to see nobody. But then, out of the corner of my screen, I caught a particle, like the swish of a potion effect, disappearing near a street corner. Without thinking, I rushed and swung my sword. I hit something. I heard the distinct oof of a player taking damage. For a split second, an invisible humanoid outline flickered. From the impact, we both saw it. Then it vanished entirely.
We realized someone was in our server using invisibility and possibly creative mode, given the antics. The outline was not a standard mob. It was player-shaped. Immediately we tried chatting. "Who are you? This isn't funny," but no response. Just the rain and thunder above.
Enough was enough. I used my admin privileges to issue a server-wide kick to any player named Herobrine or any suspicious blank name grasping at straws. Our whitelist was on theoretically. Of course, nothing happened because nothing by those names was technically logged in. After that last hit, the activity ceased. No more mysterious blows or placed objects. Eventually, the rain stopped and dawn broke. Ironically beautiful and calm, Lena and I logged off as soon as it was day, thoroughly shaken. Later that day, we pulled the server logs and combed through. We found an odd sequence during the time of our ordeal. Numerous server commands that neither of us executed, like game mode changes and give commands, originating from an unknown source, possibly a hack or someone logging in with no name. There were empty brackets in place of a name. We were baffled. In the end, we ended up resetting the server to a backup from a day before and changing our access credentials and ports, suspecting a very specific intrusion. Was it a hacker with a twisted sense of humor? Possibly, but why not brag or steal anything big? Why the elaborate cat and mouse with signs and invisibility? It felt personal, like a malicious presence toyed with us. The Eeriecraft server lived up to its name that night, though we continued playing afterward, with no further incidents. After tightening security, we always wondered what exactly happened. Was it indeed a prankster hacker, a ghost in the machine, or had we inadvertently angered the spirit of the game itself by delving too greedily into dark areas and ignoring the warnings? Sometimes, late at night on the server, I'd get paranoid, hearing a door open in an empty house or seeing a flicker at the edge of my render distance, and I'd quickly check that book we kept framed on the shrine. We ended up keeping it as a memento. It still reads, "We told you to turn back. Now it's too late." Too late for what? I do wonder, maybe just too late to forget that on our friendly little server we might not have been as alone as we thought. And that knowledge, that sense of being watched by something that doesn't show up on user lists, is perhaps the most unsettling thing of all.